Hi guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel, Dyslexic Reading. Today I'm going to be doing a deep dive into this absolute beast, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. It is no secret that this book has one of the biggest cult followings of a book that I've ever heard of or seen. It is insane. People worship the book. It's crazy. It's like it's the Bible for some people, and that's completely cool and that's great. I read it. I didn't like it. I was so disappointed. I was so upset and frustrated. I can only compare the feeling to wanting to smash everything around me after finishing it. But I've kind of come to terms with it because books aren't for everybody in the sense that plots don't work for different people. And that's completely fine. But I'm going to do a deep dive on it to kind of explain why I didn't like it, explain why people like it, and also kind of like look at the problems I found regarding this in terms of inaccessibility and other things like that. So buckle up, this is going to be an absolutely unhinged and crazy ride. So the plot of this book follows our narrator Richard Papin, who essentially transfers to this new university in what I think is his last year from his previous, and he gets there and he essentially needs to do a foreign language for his course for it to be complete and him to get the credits to graduate. He chooses French, but then he realizes there is a Greek class and he is experienced in Greek, he is pretty proficient in ancient Greek, so he wants to do that. He gets told that he probably can't do it because the professor of that class is extremely kind of concise in who he wants in that class. He handpicks them and is very elitist. Richard, being Richard, is like, maybe I don't apply to that. He goes directly to the professor called Julian, and Julian essentially says no. But upon kind of meeting Richard and getting to know him a little bit better, he then gets into the class. I think it's mainly because Richard is the only person in that class who is on financial aid and needs a lot more financial help than everybody else. And I think that actually quite fascinates Julian in a way, that he's collecting curiosities of people. But I'll get to that a little bit later. Once Richard is in that class, he realizes that his small cohort is actually quite a solid friend group. There is Bunny, Camilla, Charles, Francis, and Henry. He idolizes these people and imagines what it'd be like to be in their friend group, and eventually he is actually included in what they do outside of class. He is told by people in his life outside of that class, like people who he's kind of friends with but also degrades quite a lot in the book, especially Judy Poovey. She basically lives next door to Richard in the dorms of what I kind of see him, and she's very down to earth, very kind of like a normal person. She tells Richard that these people are not nice, they are really weird, and she would stay away from them if she was him. He ignores this and thinks, no, I want to be part of this really weird friend group, so goes for it. He's included. When he's included, he feels a bit left out. He always feels like an outsider of the group, which is basically what he is. He is an outsider. They're not going to reveal all of their secrets to him straight away because he just got there. So eventually Richard finds out that these people accidentally murdered somebody in a transcension Roman religious ritual. Listen, I do Roman religion in archaeology. Like, I know this kind of classical stuff. It didn't make sense. That part really didn't make sense to me in the way that it was so unhinged. But then again, we're not supposed to understand because Richard wasn't a part of that. That was before he became a part of their friend group properly. It's described that the friend group essentially were trying to find everlasting life through different Roman religious rituals, recreating them to the best of their experience and kind of trial and erroring it. They eventually find it, but they don't have Bunny there with them. They chose to exclude him because he stopped doing a fast that they were doing when they were preparing for it, so they didn't invite him and did it in secret. They achieved what they thought was some kind of Dionysus frenzy, and they accidentally murder somebody within that. Yeah. And if you think I'm explaining it badly, I'm really not. I'm explaining it exactly the way that this happens, exactly the way that you would experience it if you read this. I find myself more in a privileged position, especially because I study this for a living. This is my research, this is my lifeline. I do this every single day, and I still don't understand half of the stuff that these guys are on about. Anyway, after murdering this person, they obviously kind of like scram, get out of there and just wait because they can't be implicated. Bunny hears about this and he does not let this go. He finds it really suspicious that this murder happened only a couple miles away from Francis's country house. And it's like a dog with a bone, like any of us would be. He's very, very suspicious that it was them who did it. He essentially then gets absolute confirmation that they did it through Henry's diary that he reads while on a trip with Henry to Rome. And then essentially it all spirals from there. They want to murder Bunny. I actually have a theory that some of them didn't want to murder Bunny, especially Francis and Charles. They were more like chill about it, but Henry kind of like drove it all to kill Bunny. He convinced everybody that they wouldn't be safe until Bunny was dead. I think to understand the social ties in this book, you have to understand that it is like a cult-like structure. You have Julian, who is essentially the god. Then you have Henry, who is the cult leader. And then he holds domain and manipulation over Richard, over Bunny, over Francis, over Charles, and especially over Camilla, who is the only girl in the group. He really has his claws in on her. So essentially, when he says we should murder Bunny, there are no questions. They absolutely trust him to a T. They murder Bunny. They do it all together. Richard is also a part of this, which felt extremely weird for me, especially because Richard isn't part of any of their stuff usually. They're very secretive, but they let Richard in on this one thing, and it's kind of implied that it's by accident, but he's still in on it. Bunny's death is in the form of a fake accident. Bunny is on his evening stroll through the woods like he usually does to like clear his head, get some air. And they basically surprise him. He is like, oh, why are all my friends in the woods? He's very suspicious. And Henry basically throws him over the side of a ravine. And yeah, he breaks his neck. He dies. But not without trying to scramble, by the way. It is said that his nails were completely black with dirt underneath because he tried to cling on in his last moments of life. Can you imagine if your whole friend group surprised you on a walk and then murdered you? They'd been planning this for a long time. He must have felt so hurt in those moments. So then after Bunny's death, they essentially have a whole life unravelment. Everything goes wrong in their lives and it follows the story from there. Now that we got the plot, we can kind of analyse the book in a little bit more detail. The first considerable fact we need to weigh is the fact that Richard Papin is an unreliable narrator. It's told from his point of view exclusively. Richard was only party to a small amount of these events happening in the book, so we don't know whether what happened was actually true or some kind of mixed interpretation of him trying to hide his true self or the bad things that he did and make other people look worse. We see this a lot with his interactions with Camilla. Camilla being the only girl in the group, he often idolizes her, describing her as boyish and with this kind of classical medieval beauty. He really likes Camilla. That is no secret. There is even a line in it where he implies that he wants to essay Camilla because she looks so beautiful. I nearly threw the book to the other side of the room when I read that. But the point is, he basically says that Camilla is leading him on this entire time. And he makes it seem like that, but when you actually look at it through a more objective lens, you see that he is doing these things to Camilla, for example, kissing her on the cheek and telling her how beautiful she looks, and she's just like, oh, and tries to get on with her life. Camilla is looking for a friend, definitely, in Richard. She has more of a skewed relationship with these men, where she is trying to be one of them, essentially, but also they can't separate the fact that she's a woman and not a sex object in a way, and that's even translated into her brother Charles. They're twins, I know. So that is the main problem with Richard Papin and his narration of the plot. We don't have a lot of things revealed to us until he puts it together, essentially, which is fine because we are experiencing Richard's experience. We are Richard in what he wants to believe is what happened, which is quite confusing, but that is essentially what it is. These are not accurate events. These this is Richard recalling the events in a way that he looks better than everybody else. So we see the effects after Bunny's funeral, especially with Charles, who is Camilla's twin, as I said, and he falls quite deeply into alcoholism, which is absolutely awful. And Henry, who was the instigator of this whole event, just tries to carry on as normal, tries to sort things out, but it's heavily implied that he is trying to flip the blame onto other people, especially when Bunny's death gets investigated. It has a lot of themes of classicism in it, but one of the main things that the Romans and the Greeks held as a core value was piety. They wanted themselves to be the best out of the bunch, which I think translates great into Richard's narration. He is trying to be pious. He is trying to be honourable. He's trying to be the only honourable one out of the bunch to make himself feel better that he essentially murdered Bunny. And that's that. At the end of the book, it is revealed that Henry and Camilla have been kind of dating this whole time. And you can see the hints throughout the book. For example, there's a part where Camilla calls Henry a bunch of times, as in like in a pattern. She lets it ring in a pattern, so he knows it's her and he picks it up straight away after that. And then there's also points where she's calling somebody on the phone at 3 a.m. and whispering, and that is Henry. And then it gets revealed when Richard and Francis burst into a hotel room and Camilla and Henry are having a date. These social dynamics are very complex, and that is what I'll give this book props for. It really makes you think and consider. It's one of those books where you have to read between the lines to get the full extent of the plot, which many people hail this book for, but I won't condemn it for it, really, I won't. It's really thought-provoking and that's great, but also I see it as a form of essential laziness, I think it's fair to say. I like it when an author puts their full mind into a plot and lets you have some kind of guided experience. You read to be guided, essentially. I personally don't read to sit down and be like, I'm gonna make this whole plot in my head. I like it when a plot flows like it's supposed to flow and doesn't leave a lot up to speculation, because I feel like it's just lazy. And that's my hot take. One of many. What I feel like this book achieves is definitely a sense of romanticized academia. It achieves a really visceral setting. You can really picture yourself there. And I feel as well like it does achieve some great symbolism. It might pain me to say, but this book does achieve great symbolism, especially in the part where they accidentally kill a man during the Roman transcendency. And there is a part where Camilla is said to have turned into a deer and they're chasing a deer. And the man, his stomach is stabbed, essentially, but Camilla doesn't have a drop of blood on her except only on her head. Like, as if she was a deer and her horns stabbed the man in the stomach while she was running. It was a complete accident. So if you are to believe that they did achieve that ritual, then Camilla accidentally murdered the man and they just found him later, because they found Camilla much later and she was just putting her feet in a river trying to like think about what just happened. The reason why I think this book is so popular, not because of the content inside, it's because people think afterwards, they have come up with these wild theories. For example, that Julian is like the absolute ringleader and he's condoned the murder of Bunny. He's condoned the Roman transcendency and the sacrifice that they need to make for that. He encourages them. Julian doesn't. He really doesn't. He is just somebody who Henry idolizes. So that idolization from Henry then gets translated to the rest of them, because Henry is their cult leader. He is their oxygen. They idolize Henry, so they idolize Julian. Julian finds out about Bunny's murder and he flees. He doesn't want to turn these kids in because he is emotionally attached to them. He has a lot of feelings for them, a lot of love, but he cannot be a part of it. He cannot be near them as soon as he finds out, so he flees. And it's not cowardice. It's him respecting them, but also taking a step back because he's so appalled and needs time to take away so he can think. Maybe he didn't even want time. Maybe he just wanted to be away from them because they murdered 2 people. That is one theory that I really don't agree with, but also there are other theories. For example, there's one where Bunny isn't real. There is one where people say that Bunny isn't real. He is just a manifestation of everybody's conscious. And as soon as they push Bunny off the ravine and he dies, then that is them disregarding their good conscience. I cannot characterize to you enough that Bunny is a person in this book. He is a real character, and his death is essentially the event that sets the devolution of all of these characters into motion. Bunny is a character. I am a strong believer of believe what you want to believe, but when you are believing something that completely isn't true and is not the narrative that is being pushed, and then commending a book for it, I can't agree with that. I'm really sorry. They bugged me. Like, it's a fun theory, like, definitely. Bunny is not a good person. Do not get me wrong. Bunny is definitely not a good person. He is really racist, like, extremely racist. He really does not like people who don't fit into his box of what he thinks normalcy looks like. He is dyslexic. I'm also dyslexic, but also I don't push my frustrations onto other people about that. He does try hard, Bunny. Like, he really does when he wants to, but he won't if he doesn't. I don't think we can call Bunny a manifestation of good conscience, especially because he uses so many really disgusting phrases to describe different groups of people, like Jewish communities or people who have more spiritual views, and Catholics. I do not know what he had against the Catholics. It makes me wonder if we read the same book. Sorry. There is another theory that I think is more intriguing, where Julian has retired and he's reaching the ends of his years, and he thinks up a story, essentially, about his life or about some events that he can contemplate on or publish. It is interesting, especially because from Julian's point of view, he does exhibit some bias. He is an honourable man. He doesn't want to be a part of what they have done. He completely goes away. He does not want any part of it. And that is quite honourable. It is quite pious. He presents himself in that way. But also, it wouldn't make sense as much as it would make sense that this book is just the way this book is. The plot is the way the plot is. I mean, I have my own theories regarding this plot. I truly believe that, like I've said, Richard Papin believes that he wants to bring himself out of this better than he actually was. He portrays Henry as this cult leader and this horrible guy who's manipulating everybody around him. And as the characters devolve, they kind of realise this pattern of systematic manipulation and abuse. And that's when Charles essentially comes in and tries to end Henry's life. It makes sense in the way that the book is. It really does. But my theory doesn't essentially completely disregard the plot of this book. It kind of just explains different aspects of the book without making too big of leaps, if you get what I mean. Whereas these other theories that I've discussed make these massive leaps outside of the plot, like absolutely extreme leaps outside of the plot, disregard half of the plot, and are like, Bunny's a good guy, he is the manifestation of a good conscience. What else? Julian is a cult leader, blah, 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 blah. Like, makes no sense. Show me receipts, show me papers, and maybe I'll believe it. Maybe I'll jump on the train, maybe I'll love it. But if there is no evidence, no receipts, no screenshots, I am not getting on that train. I mean, maybe I should talk about the more technical problems of The Secret History. For example, like the pacing. The pacing is extremely slow. I feel like we could rip out 1/3 of this book probably and cut out a lot of the descriptions or random ramblings in Richard's head, and it would be a more effective book. When I tell you I read 628 pages of this, it was not worth it. It was not. As I said to one of my friends this week, I could not respectably recommend this to you. I can't do it. I only recommend things that I like or I think you'd like, and I did not like this, and I can't understand why other people might like this. The problem with this book is it focuses so much on the romanticization of academia and classics. So it doesn't actually acknowledge the problems in classics like racism You have the whole whitewashing in classics as well. We have Roman statues that are white because they were remade in the 1700s within these grand halls, because that's how they saw them. They saw them as white. They saw them as a show of white elitism. However, these statues were painted. They were really bright, vibrant colours in their time, and they depicted an array of different races, and there was so much diversity in the Roman and Greek empires, and that is completely ignored. This book is a show of elite white classism in academia, and it's everything that I try and work against. So of course I'm not gonna like that, even if it is satirical. It's a deep problem that I face every single day personally. So why am I going to think it's funny, or why am I going to think it's fun to read about? I've been in academia now for nearly 4 years. It is the trenches sometimes, especially when somebody is there who has lived an absolutely privileged and sheltered life, and they are white and they don't understand why other people are having these problems and they don't want to acknowledge them. I have seen in like the heritage sector especially, people ignoring problems and just essentially wanting to reduce the amounts of collections people want to see, limiting accessibility for the public to learn about the diversity and different ethnic backgrounds of people in the Roman Empire, and just showing the fun objects. Something that really doesn't sit well with me at all. It really provoked a lot of really angry and frustrated feelings for me. I think Julian is a good representation of an elitist professor in a way. A lot of professors will teach. They don't actually teach, they just talk at you, and you're not learning anything because they're not providing any contextual views. You're not learning any background that makes sense, so these things that they're saying to you will just fly in one ear out the other because you're like, what are you on about? Explain. And I think that is a good show of Julian. Julian comes across as this really nice guy who's really thoughtful and really direct, but Richard says that he's not a nice guy, and it's like it's a really nice facade, but in the underneath is all rotted. He's not nice, he's self-interested, he is selfish. But also we need to acknowledge that that is the description of all these characters. They all look really nice and great on the surface, which Richard saw when he first came into this class, but in the underneath they are rotted, they are corrupt, they are morally bankrupt. They do not care about anybody but themselves and their own interests. I think the best way to characterize this book sometimes is it really prioritized style over substance. It really kept going with this dark academia aesthetic. A lot of the characters wore suits, they wore really nice outfits, which obviously isn't realistic for anybody who is at university. There are days where you just want to go in your pajamas, or you just want to go in activewear. You cannot be asked to dress like that every single day. This book achieves the dark academia aesthetic really well. It is speculated that it did create it in a way, and I guess that's true. It does give you this really autumny view, but at the same time there's not much substance to this. The characters are superficial and shallow, and there's not much to analyse on them apart from reading between the lines of a plot. That's like the best description I can give you essentially, which is really bad, because if I'm giving you such a brief description about why this book is bad because it didn't actually make sense in the long run, then yes. Also, all of this is just my opinion, by the way. Like, you could have loved this book so much and this could be your favourite book in the world, and that is absolutely amazing. Like, I'm not here to say that this book is horrible and your opinions are wrong. I'm just giving my opinion on why I didn't find it great. But you could absolutely love it, and I would absolutely love to hear some of your opinions if you did love it. I would love to read that. That would be so great. I think it's just about being mindful and respectful of everybody's opinions and how they differ, and how people can have completely different reading experiences. I told my friends that I did not like this book and it was terrible for me, and they told me that a lot of other people liked the book and they were really confused why I didn't like it. I think my main thing is I read for escapism and I read for enjoyment. I didn't find any enjoyment in this book. I found it a chore to read, and normally I would DNF a book like this straight away, but because it's The Secret History and because this has such a cult following, I wanted to follow through and actually read the whole of the book so I could give an honest review. I think I did say in a previous video that I didn't think I'd like this book, or maybe that I wanted to like this book but I just didn't think I would, and that is completely rang true. I really wanted to love this book. I wanted this book to change my absolute life. I wanted to think about it every single day. I wanted it to be my absolute new ACOTAR, basically. But I just couldn't do it. No. I saw a video of this girl on TikTok saying that we should be reading more books like Donna Tartt's Secret History instead of books. She used the example of Colleen Hoover. I don't like Colleen Hoover personally. She made 2 good books in my opinion, and that was it. I hate the woman. I do not support her in any way or form. I will just give you my honest opinion on those 2 books. However, she was saying that we should read less Colleen Hoover and more things like The Secret History. Completely disagree. Read anything you want. Reading is supposed to be about enjoyment and fulfillment. It's a personal experience. Do not subject yourself to a piece of literature that is thick, that is insufferable, that is not a nice experience to read. I would not want to meet any of these characters. I think I could effectively fight these characters and still win. I really do. This sounds really weird, but none of these people are high scorers in university. It is said that Henry does not care. He just wants to do whatever he wants to do. He has thought about dropping out. He has not put effort in. None of these people are high scorers in university, yet they think they're God's gift to academia. Doesn't make any sense to me. The point is, read what you want to read. You could read anything you want. If you love Colleen Hoover and you love her romance books, read them. If you love Sarah J. Maas, read Sarah J. Maas. If you love Elsie Silver, read Elsie Silver. Do not put so much pressure on yourself to read a book that you will hate just because somebody says that if you don't, you're not intelligent and you're not bettering yourself, because they're clearly jealous of the experiences that you have and the fact that you better yourself every day and you're a happy person. Clearly very bitter, and I did voice that in the comment section, by the way. I think I should sum up what I did really like about this book in a bit of a list, so we're not ending this video on a really negative note. I really love the cover. It's so beautiful, honestly, and it has an engraving on the front, which is like a classical engraving that I've seen like motifs of many times. I just really love it. It's very beautiful. As I said, I loved the background descriptions, and this kind of dark academia theme was very satisfying to read about. I liked the symbolism in the Roman transcendency ritual. It was really interesting. I liked the complex character structures, especially these kind of notes of manipulation, and it's subtle manipulation. It's not in your face, but you can still see it, which I quite liked. I also really like the audiobook for this. Donna Tartt's voice and the way that she reads it and the way that she experiences it is so lovely. Definitely listen to that if you're going to read The Secret History. It was really great. The chapters in this book, though, too lengthy. Some of them are like 100 pages, so the audiobook essentially makes a part 1, part 2, part 3 of the chapter to split it up and make it a little bit easier, and I think that's something they acknowledged to make it better. So props on them for acknowledging how long the chapters were and that it needed work. Honestly though, once again, if you do really want to read this book, do not let my opinions put you off. Read it. I am not here to tell you not to read something because it's awful. I am here to tell you my experience of reading it and that I didn't like it, and maybe if you have similar taste to me and you dislike the things that I've mentioned, then maybe this book isn't for you. But if you do want the cultural experience of it like I really wanted, then read it. Do it. Have your own opinions. You may love it. You may find it the most thought-provoking piece of literature you have ever read, and it is your favourite book and it is your comfort book, and for that I'm really happy for you. But definitely don't sleep on the audiobook. I will say that. Audiobook, don't sleep on it. Anyway, thank you for watching this really weird and unhinged review, I guess, of The Secret History. I did end up giving it 2.5 stars. No, I gave it 2 stars, sorry. I gave it 2 stars. The 0.5 felt too generous. It felt like it was rounding up to 3. It really needed to be 2 for me, at least. But yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed it and at least understood some of it. I know it's a lot of me rambling, but these are just my raw thoughts and feelings. is going to sound a little bit unhinged. But thank you for sticking this long into the video. If you have, please like and subscribe. That helps me out a lot so you don't miss my next videos that are coming. They're going to be a bit fun, especially the week after next video, which is going to be a vlog of a week in my life. But it's going to be a little bit special because I'm going on a trip. You'll see how much I read in that trip. It might be not anything, it might be something, but definitely will be a vlog coming. Again, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!